Hello, and welcome back to my podcast called Faith is Strength. I'm Nuchy Mandel, speaking out of Spring Valley, New York, helping spread the beautiful light of spirituality across the world. The date of this recording is June 6, 2017. May my words and the expressions of my soul be gratifying to everyone who hears them. I pray that my words help pave a beautiful path in your journey of life. Thank you for tuning in. I thank your parents for conceiving you. Parents. We are all a product of our parents. Their DNA is woven into the fabric of our being. Our upbringing and collective experiences while being around our parents are what shape the very makeup of our personalities. Don't fight the DNA may seem like a statement that suggests that one should give in to one's DNA fate, but the opposite is true. Don't fight the DNA is a call for action. It suggests that one should accept, embrace, and realize who he or she is and where they come from. Once you've ventured to accept that reality, you are now one step away from the ultimate goal, breaking the pattern where you see fit. Let's back up a few steps and start from the beginning. Some of us love our parents, others resent them. Yet there are those who are just neutral about their feelings toward their parents. Whichever way you feel about your parents, one thing is intrinsically true. If you grew up in their presence, you are very much like them. This truth seems to infringe on many people's psyche and often gets a negative response. After spending some time on this topic and idea, talking about it with my peers, I've noticed 3 ways in which people usually respond. Number 1, the denier. The denier of this truth sounds something like this: I'm nothing like my parents. Then we have number 2, the moderate. The moderate seems to be somewhat open-minded to the idea, usually due to them personally realizing its truth, and may sound like this: I started noticing how much I'm like my mother or father. Number 3 is the enlightened. The enlightened is fully aware of this concept. They've accepted it and used their knowledge to try and break the pattern. They usually sound like this: it's unbelievable how much I'm like my father, or it's unbelievable how much I'm like my mother. The goal of this podcast is to catapult us into the 3rd category. I'll say this as bluntly as possible. You are just like your parents. Everything about you, from the way that you think to the way that you react and treat people, has very much to do with your DNA and your upbringing. Coming to this realization shouldn't be burdensome. It should be satisfying because it will yield awesome emotional and psychological benefits. You can deny it, but you'd only be living in denial. The truth is, we are so much like our parents, it's actually a bit scary to ponder. The more you strip away from whatever it is that doesn't allow you to admit it, the more awareness you will subsequently achieve. This awareness will get you closer to the goal, which again is to break the pattern when it's necessary. Considering we are so much like our parents in the most profound ways, we obviously have a great deal of positive and negative elements to assess. No human is perfect, which means that what you've received from your parents is both good and bad. Some of it you'd probably want to capitalize on, and some you'd probably want to completely get rid of, or switch it into good traits. And that is what it means to break the pattern. The goal of learning about this and accepting it as true is so that you can begin to realize which negative character or personality traits are of detriment and break that pattern. In other words, reformat the software. But if you can't accept the truth, you'll be unable to break the pattern or reformat. Besides, spiritually speaking, our souls absolutely adore truth. Nothing sets the soul at ease as much as the truth does. The more our being is aligned with the truth, the more tranquil our soul becomes. We develop healthy, expressive personalities, and we're not afraid to face our darkest traits, tackling them with honesty and precision. Slowly and gradually, we reformat our patterns and progress into happier and more refined individuals. However, there are people who have this knowledge, yet don't utilize it for change. They simply give in to their DNA urges. Think of DNA as a habit that can very often be detrimental. Here's an example. One of your parents were very critical of you growing up. Every time you spent money on things that they deemed inappropriate, they scolded you. Fast forward to you becoming an adult. When your sibling or other peer spends on something that you think is inappropriate, you may naturally be inclined to tell them how you feel. You will basically mimic your parents' behavior, but you'll see it as your own evolved perspective. You may even have good reason. You'll back yourself up with all kinds of logic. You may tell yourself, it doesn't make sense. Why can't he buy a $20 bottle of vodka? Why did he have to buy a $35 bottle? It's only going to be used for mixes anyway. You will find yourself justifying or making excuses for why it's okay for you to impose your perspective and outlook on someone else. Of course, if you utilized balance as described in the last podcast, or just plain and simple open-mindedness, you would never impose your outlook on anyone else. But intrinsically you are doing it because it is in your DNA. It's an uncontrollable habit. The urges to scold the peer that is doing something wrong surges inside of you. You let loose. You give in to your DNA. Don't fight the DNA as a reminder to maintain inner peace. It's a reminder for acceptance, acknowledgement, and to embrace who you are. But it's also a reminder to ponder whether you are correct in how you are conducting yourself. If you choose to break the pattern, you will free yourself of the habit. You will find inner peace. You have to come to the clear understanding that when someone else does something that you see as wrong, it is potentially your problem. I'm sure the individual who bought the $35 bottle had their own perspective and justification. So, if you have a problem with something, perhaps you want to examine from where it stems. Where does it come from? What are you trying to get out of the confrontation? Are you under the assumption that you're going to change the person's perspective? Are you fostering the fantasy that the individual cares what you have to say? Where is this headed? Once you really break down and get to the bottom of your impulsive personality traits, which are nothing more than DNA in play, you'll find yourself having to break the pattern because there's nothing but baggage there. Those bags contain a whole bunch of energy that needs to be reformatted and turned into something healthy. Something that will enhance your well-being and possibility, even those around you. Using our example above, your reply might look something like this. Wow, you bought such nice bottles of vodka for the party? I never thought of using such expensive bottles for mixes. I'm sure it will be fantastic. As a result of reformatting like this, the quality and overall positive frequency of your life will greatly improve. Do you know how peaceful and at ease you will feel after you've realized that your reactions don't control you, but that you control them? There's no greater feeling. When those urges arrive, and the less pleasant parts of your DNA rear their ugly heads, you stop and remind yourself about breaking the pattern and let it go. In this manner, you can gradually move from trait to trait, selecting the good and transforming the bad. In doing so, you embody balance, paying tribute to your divine intellect and your divine soul, transcending your animal body until you truly begin to live more freely and spiritually healthy. In essence, this whole idea is just another form of getting in touch with yourself. As I mentioned earlier, your soul loves when you're being truthful. The more we get in touch with ourselves, the more we acknowledge our shortcomings, the more we are free to improve them. If we keep them locked in a box, how will they ever be addressed? Finally and ultimately, we are only hurting ourselves when living in denial. We suffer the most. Sometimes the chains that prevent us from being free are more mental than physical. Stop being imprisoned in an unlocked jail. Get up and walk out. One final, very important point I'd like to add on this subject is that if we do not tackle our negative character traits that stem from our upbringing, they will only get much worse as we grow older. Do not occupy the fantasy that by ignoring them or that by merely suppressing them, they will disappear, because you will only be in for a rude awakening later in life, usually at the expense of others, like your loved ones. So, I beg you, for the sake of your own life's journey, make it a point to address these things sooner than later, and it should be done consistently and with open-mindedness. With God's loving grace, these 4 words will assist in your emotional redemption. Don't fight the DNA. Until next time, peace and love. God bless.